Okay, and welcome, my friend, to another episode of the Red Delta Project podcast, where we simplify diet and exercise by taking a fundamental approach, giving you more power, control, and freedom over your healthy lifestyle. As always, I'm your host, Matt Schifferly, and this is the live feed and Q&A here on the Red Delta Project YouTube channel. We host this every Saturday around 2:30 Mountain Standard Time here in Denver, Colorado, and it gives you the chance for us to converse, talk. You can ask questions. People are already coming in. Mariano's here, Sniff Rat from England. Thank you very much for coming on in, folks. And today's topic is a particularly fun one, which is expectations versus reality when it comes to, well, all things fitness. We're talking exercise, we're talking diet, building muscle, losing weight, everything out there. There's a lot of ideas within our fitness culture on how we're often kind of almost subliminally and subconsciously programmed to believe this is what you're supposed to do, and this is how it's supposed to go and stuff. And after being in the business of fitness for nearly 20 years now, I can tell you that most of this isn't at all how it actually works. And I promise this is not going to be kind of a bum out session where people are like, oh, the expectation is I'm going to lose weight quickly and easily, and it's going to be great. And the reality is it's going to be a complete sufferfest and slog, and you're going to lose like maybe 5 pounds a year and things like that. I promise I'm going to kind of stay away from those bum out sort of things, because in fact, a lot of the expectations we have actually set the bar pretty low for what we can actually expect and make this whole fitness thing a hell of a lot harder than it needs to be. So let's just jump right in. Let me give you a good example of some of these things. I had a gentleman one time, this was years ago, and he came up to me, he's like, Matt, I'm really concerned about my fat loss journey. And I was like, oh, okay, well, step into my office here. Let's get this rolling. And I was like, what's wrong? And he's like, well, here's the deal. Started losing weight about 6 months ago. And I've been steadily losing weight for about 6 months. And I'm just going to stop you right there. I told him. I interrupted him. I'm like, you mean to tell me you started losing weight for the first time ever 6 months ago, and you've been losing weight somewhat steadily for about 6 months now? And he's like, yeah. And the thing is, I'm like, hold on. You right there, because that's happened, is by far more successful than like 99.9% of everyone else. Just being able to do that, because the vast majority of people who start trying to lose weight end up quitting within just a couple of weeks. And even the people who don't quit end up stopping their weight loss, and they're not losing weight on a steady pace after the better part of several weeks or maybe a month or two. So it's been 6 weeks and you're still losing weight? And he's like, yeah, roughly only about a pound and a half a week. I'm like, dude, you are doing great. You are doing so amazing right now. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Like, you are winning big time. And he came to me thinking, oh, I'm only losing like a pound a week. Oh, it's just, I'm not losing it fast enough. He thought it was like way behind the 8 ball. And the fact of the matter was, dude, most of the time that never happens. The fact that you have even been losing it at all over 6 months is way ahead of most other people. And the fact that you haven't even gained it back is way ahead of everybody else. So what you may think is not so great is actually really, really, really good. And that's probably the first thing to recognize, is that when we are getting into fitness, or when we're starting to get into it, there's a lot of ideas and messages out there of this idea of consistent linear progress. And we're making progress at a certain rate of speed, and we're supposed to be successful by this amount. And you're supposed to be doing pull-ups at this point in time, or deadlifting twice your body weight by this point, or losing this much weight each week, and all these sorts of things. But the fact is, that almost never happens. It's extremely rare for things to go according to a plan like that. Here's another story for you. I once was, I think I was interviewing for a job. I was visiting some friends of mine in Minnesota. And I was kind of looking at, I was living in Vermont at the time. I wanted to move out, and I was like, where am I going to end up? And of course, I ended up here in Colorado. So, but some friends in Minnesota, they're like, oh, we'll go to the local gym here, the big gym, and you can talk to the managers and stuff, and maybe that's a good place for you to land. I was like, great. So I kind of shadowed their PT manager for the better part of a day, and I was hanging out with him and stuff. And he was showing me this software about how you could take someone's general physique. It was like a cartoon diagram of somebody's physique, of how it looked. And they said, okay, this is where you're starting off with. And if you personal train with this program for about 6 months, you're going to end up with this kind of physique. And it was like computer graphics that showed changes. the entire program was meant to be like, oh, wow, look at that change. Well, I can see myself being like that. That would be great. But instead, it was a complete failure because A, the change wasn't nearly as pronounced as people were expecting. They're like, after 6 months, I only go from that to that. Like, I figured I'd look like Captain America by then. I figured it'd be a lot more than, oh God, no, I'm not going to do personal training. I'm not going to work out for 6 months just to only end up there. You got to be kidding me. And the other thing that didn't work is people who did end up signing up, they always fell way short of that expectation. So even though a lot of them were saying, oh, I don't want to limit myself to just that, that was far and beyond what they would actually usually achieve. So it's all of this expectations versus reality sort of thing. And if you get anything else from this podcast, go away with the idea that whenever we're trying to go into a new version of ourselves, we're trying to achieve something we've never had before, be it lighter weight, building muscle, achieving a skill, anywhere else in life, like becoming more successful in business or being able to be more comfortable in social settings, whatever the case may be. There is no set program or map that's going to definitively tell you where you're going to go and how you're going to get there. That's why creativity is so gosh darn important to this, because fundamentally, you're trying to do something that has never been done before, ever in the history of the world. And I know that might be like, well, dude, people have lost weight, people have built muscle, people have gotten their first pull-up. What are you talking about? Yes, but nobody's done it in your circumstances, with your genetics, with your lifestyle, with your current beliefs, with your current habits. So even though we're seemingly going after an objective that thousands and millions of people have achieved before you, nobody's done it in your circumstances, which means there's no game plan here, folks, that's going to definitively tell you what you should do, how you're going to do it, and when you're going to achieve those results. If you can be able to do that, go buy a lottery ticket because you have a crystal ball that can tell the future. So there's always going to be this little bit of amorphic, like, I'm not sure where things are going to go and where things are going to end up, but I'm just going to do now what I can and move forward as I can. And as I move forward, then better answers will start to come available to me. The analogy of always like walking through fog is a very good one. You can only see about 20 feet in front of you. So it's kind of silly to be like, well, what do I do 10 miles down the road? Like, well, you can kind of plan and stuff, of course, but all you can really do is deal with what's right in front of you. And you're not going to know what you need to do until you've gone that short distance and tackled what you can do right now to know what you then should do. Okay? So let's go into another one. Here is this idea of I need to find the right diet or the right exercise program that's going to take care of me for the duration of until I hit this objective, or take care of me for life. Again, never happens. I don't know a single person who's ever been at least mildly successful in diet and exercise that's ever done it on one particular diet or exercise program or approach. Never happens. Now, of course, some things are consistent throughout. Like I started mountain bike racing, getting into mountain biking in college, and I still do that. But at no point was I ever going to be like, this is the program I'm going to use. These are the sets and reps. This is the type of diet I'm going to use. And that's going to take care of me all the way through to whatever goal I want to achieve. And that's going to be what I'm going to stick with for the rest of my life. Never happens. Instead, you look at someone's fitness journey and you're always looking at, well, I did this for about 8 months. And then I kind of slowed down on that and I did this other thing instead. And then I did Pilates, but then I changed more to yoga. And then after yoga, I really started liking strength training, but more athletics. So I got into kettlebells, and it just evolves and it changes over time. And usually what ends up happening is these things have ingredients that get deposited into your current plan. Like I was saying earlier, it's a creative thing. So you might start off with it being a 100% yoga is going to take care of me. I'm a yogi. That's going to be all I do. But after about a year or so of that, you're like, okay, I like yoga, but I'm also going to add in some calisthenics. And then after a while of that, I'm going to like, okay, I like the yoga, I like the calisthenics. Now I'm going to add in some sandbag work, or I'm going to take up roller hockey or whatever, right? So each one of these becomes a component in your overall plan that some things get minimized, some things may be discarded outright, some things may just change and evolve. But it's never going to be a set, fixed approach to how you eat and how you exercise that's going to take you all the way through to your objective or throughout the rest of your life. And if anything's going to hold you back, it's trying to be dogmatic and set and 100% committed to only that one thing. I get questions from people all the time where they're saying, okay, so I was all on like progressive calisthenics and calisthenics training and stuff like that, but gosh, sometimes I feel like I just want to incorporate a little bit of basic barbell work or something. I'm like, great, go for it, do it. Add and subtract whatever you want into your programs. If there's something that just doesn't seem to jive with you anymore, get rid of it. If there's something that you're like, I'm doing it this way and stuff, but I feel like making these changes, go ahead and make those changes. Unless you're committed to something that you have to for your job or your profession or something like that, then there's no reason not to change up what you're doing and how you're doing it. Because chances are very good, if you're contemplating a change, there's a very good reason you should be making that change. And to not make changes to your plans or your diet or your workouts and stuff is probably going to seriously hold you back. It's probably going to be more detrimental than anything else in the long run. And I used to do this all the time, especially when I was a lot younger, where I would have, not even in fitness, but just daily routines, because I always wanted more control over my life. Even when I was a kid, it's like, okay, first I get up and I make my bed, and then I go brush my teeth, and then I do this. And I had things planned out to the minute on exactly how I did it. And whenever I thought I had the perfect plan for how I would start my morning, and I was like, as long as I stick to this, I have control. But the ironic thing is you don't have control when you're forcing yourself to stick to a plan that's no longer a good fit for you, because now the plan is in control and you're not. So I would find myself forcing my behaviors on a daily basis of when I would go to school and who I would talk to and when I would do my homework. Excuse me, very dry out here. When I would do my homework and stuff, and then my life would change in some way, shape, or form. And I would find myself being like, no, I can't play basketball right now. I have to go home and do my homework right now. And my friends would be like, well, play basketball and then do homework. No, I have to go according to the plan. And I would miss out on fun times with my friends because the plan was in charge. I wasn't in charge. So being flexible and being able to adapt and change and adopt and discard things and rules and stuff in your diet and exercise plans is how this stuff really works most of the time. And being super strict and dogmatic all the time is usually not the way it works. And I know a lot of times people will come across as like, well, look at this bodybuilder. He did this plan, or the model. They did this diet very religiously for their photo shoot, or this celebrity in order to get rid of that role and ready for a role in an action movie. And it's like, absolutely, yes, they did do that. And they did it for a very limited period of time with a specific objective. And then once they hit that contest or the photo shoot or they shot the movie, they stopped doing that plan anymore. They didn't stick to it forever. They weren't married to it. They were like, yeah, I'm doing this and it's really hard and it kind of sucks. And yes, I've got to make some serious sacrifices, but there's a definitive finish line. And once I cross that, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not doing it this way. I'm going to go back to a lot of other basic habits that I have. And that brings up another expectation and stuff that I'll get into. But let's see if we got some more people coming on here. Michael from Dropweight Daddy. Leo, always good to see you. Jamie, hey, Matt, how's it going, folks? Good to see you, Jen Zem. Finally back. Good to see you. All right. And keep the questions coming, folks, so I can address them here live on the podcast as well. Excuse me. So there's this other idea out there of optimization that I run into, where oftentimes people are trying to force themselves to stick to a perfect diet and perfect workout, or even whatever dogmatic approach, because in their mind, for whatever reason, they've got this idea of this is the best way to do it. This is the right or the correct way to eat, or the correct way to do an exercise program or something along those lines, and that it's optimal. But the fact of the matter is, optimal is not maintainable. This is one of the things that I really came to finally understand a couple of years ago, is that we all have the potential to achieve a very high level in anything in life, a very high level of physique, a very high level of performance, a very high level of health and what have you. However, whatever is optimal is not something we can maintain. I always use the analogy of climbing Mount Everest. We can get to the top of Mount Everest. Human beings have been doing it for quite a while now. but we can't live up there. We can't stay up there. It's simply not something that's sustainable. So a lot of times when we think I've got to optimize, I don't want to leave anything on the table. I want the perfect diet and the perfect workout and the perfect body and perfect this and perfect that. One of two things is going to happen. One, you find something that you can maintain for diet and exercise, but it's not going to be optimal. So you're not going to have your ultimate best results. Or two, it is very much an optimal thing, but it's going to be hell and high water in order to maintain it beyond even a short period of time. Either way, you're going to be frustrated and you're not going to be happy with the results. So that's why it's much more of the reality of fitness is going after a result that's roughly about, generalization here, about 75 to 80% of your potential. That's something that takes some work and some effort, but it's sustainable. It's something that we can do. I've known many models and stuff. They talk about this sort of thing of being, quote, within spitting distance of being photo ready. But there was a fitness model on a podcast years ago I was listening to, and he's like, look, the image you see on those magazines, because this is back when they shot magazine covers and stuff. And he's like, I'm only in that kind of shape. I've been doing this 15 years, and I only look like that maybe a total of 2 weeks out of that entire 15 years. It's like, I get stopped on the street. People are like, oh, hey, it's so-and-so. Look at, kind of let yourself go a little bit there, man. I mean, it's just, yeah, man. It's like, they think I look like the guy on the magazine covers all the time. And he's like, I totally don't. I'm healthy. I'm fit. I've got muscle. I'm pretty lean. I've got like a 4-pack or whatever. But he's like, I don't look like that most of the time. But when a magazine calls up, it's like, okay, we need you for a photo shoot in 6 weeks. He's like, all right, hardcore training, hardcore diet. I get in that kind of shape, literally timed to the hour of when they need to take the photos. And then he's like, then afterwards, I go back into my maintenance mode. So this idea of I've got to optimize and do my absolute best all the time, that's not how people usually do this. Because if we try to do that, then we end up falling down the proverbial mountain where you're like, oh, I go as hard as I possibly can. I can't keep this up. And then we stop and we quit and we go way past that sustainable point, which is still pretty darn good. And we just fall all the way back. And then we just got this big yo-yo effect going back and forth, which is extremely hard and stressful on mind, body, and lifestyle. All right, Mariano asking a question. Hey, Matt. I find it satisfying today to give my best effort with the resources I have, but friends who train regularly and with good results, I always see them dissatisfied and unmotivated. Yeah. So one of the things to recognize is that humans are often very, we feel good or bad, not based on our situation, but the direction we're headed in. So I've seen people literally weep for joy because they lost a few pounds. They're still very obese. They're still very much overweight, or they're, getting their push-ups and they go from 5 push-ups to 10 push-ups on the wall or the countertop. And they're just over the moon about that. But if you looked at that in social media, they'd be like, they're still weak. They're so fat. What are they happy about? But I've also seen people who are seemingly in the best shape ever, like Captain America. Oh my God, look at this person. And they are distraught because they weren't as strong as before, because they have lost a little bit of ground due to illness or injury, or, oh, I just was on vacation for 1 week and now, lifting this weight feels so much heavier. And they feel unhappy about that, even though they're one of the strongest people in the entire state. So it's not so much where we are, it's the direction we're headed in. And if we recognize this, then that gives us a couple of things. One is that happiness does not come from achieving a particular end result. This is another expectation versus reality. The expectation is I'm unhappy with what I have. I'm unhappy with where I am, my body, my performance and stuff. But I'm sure once I can do 100 push-ups or run a marathon in 3 hours or achieve single-digit body fat, then I get to be happy. Then I'm going to be happy, and that will make it all worthwhile. Sometimes it happens, but it's very, very fleeting. Instead, we want to have the idea, rather than I'm going to be happy when I get to that result, of I'm happy with my progress. Progress, not perfection. I know it's an old kind of idea, but it is true, because when we feel like we're moving forward, we become much happier with things. But when we feel we're going backwards, then we're starting to be like, I don't like this so much. So it's not contingent upon arriving at a particular destination. And sometimes this is why people will be incredibly unhappy and depressed when they do achieve that destination. I think, I almost said it was Colonel Sanders. No, not Colonel Sanders. Deion Sanders. I think he was talking on ESPN one time. He's like, I literally was, the lowest time in my life was when we won the Super Bowl, and I'm driving home in my Lamborghini, and I'm trying to figure out why I shouldn't wrap my Lamborghini around a telephone pole. And the reason is because he's like, great, I achieved this objective, winning the Super Bowl. I'm one of the best football players. I'm driving this hot car, and nothing really happened. Like, my life didn't radically change over. I'm not happy like I thought I should be. And that can be a very sobering, sad sort of thing. So focusing on the process and the progress moving forward is usually a much more reliable way to enjoy what we have. And that means also happiness is literally 2 inches in front of you, the smallest little bit of improvements. And the other thing too is a lot of times people will say, oh, I'm working my ass off now. I'm stressed about food. I'm crushing myself. My body feels like crap. I'm putting myself through hell. But once I achieve that objective, then I am going to be fine. But the fact of the matter is, whatever you did to achieve that result, you have to keep doing to keep that result. So if you adopt, for example, say a diet that makes you feel like crap and food cravings, and you have food issues and disordered eating habits and all these sorts of things, but the whole time you're like, but once I lose the weight, then I get to be happy. No, if you're miserable getting to a destination, you're going to be pretty miserable at that destination and maintaining it. Or you're going to realize, oh, I'm not happy here, scrap it all, and then you're going to fall backwards. And while you may have relief from the habits and the stressors that got you there, you're also going to be sad because now you're going backwards and you have regression, and that's going to be unhappy. So you just get into this endless cycle of misery. And that's why a lot of times in our fitness culture, we've got these ideas that fitness is about misery, that it's about pain and blood, sweat, and tears and sacrifice, and it's not worth it. And that's why sometimes when I'm at parties and stuff and I talk to people about health and fitness, they're like, no, I want nothing to do with it. Like, I just want to live my life. I actually want to be happy. I don't want to be miserable all the time. I don't want to be in pain and suffering just so I can have abs. And that's another expectation, is that that's how fitness is. And the reality is far from it. But let's get to some of more of these questions here. Jen Zam asking, hey Matt, discussing back in shape with a friend some years ago, having gotten to then status at 50, he said, does it matter if it takes 5 years to get where you want to be? And so forth. So yeah, another big one there. Time scales. People ask a lot of times in the fitness space, how long will it take me to get to this result or that result and stuff? There is no definitive time scale for anything. How long should it take me to lose 10 pounds? How long should it take me to get my first pull-up? I usually reply with something of a cheeky answer of probably somewhere between 10 minutes and 10 years. Somewhere in that ballpark, is generalization. Because there are so many variables that come into play, and everybody starts off in a different position of where that is. It's like on a football field. Oh, how many plays until we get to the end zone? I don't know. Some people start on the opponent's 10-yard line, so you might be able to make it in one. Or you could be starting on your own 2-yard line, in which case it's probably going to be a while. So we're all different. So as they say in Vermont, you get there when you get there. It could be a while, it could be short term. Just focus on the process and the progress, and you'll get there when you can get there. And it may take a lot longer than someone else, but no one ever said this whole fitness thing is supposed to be fair, because it's not. This person was able to achieve this milestone in 5 months. I've been doing this 10 years. I'm still not there. Yeah, that's how it works. There's no, I think the school system sometimes sets this expectation up, because it's like you start school in this September, and you go through the school year and you do your homework and you study, and then at the end of it, then you go to the next grade. So there's this expectation of, once you've done this amount of time and this amount of work, then you graduate to the next level. But life doesn't work like that. Real life is you're going to graduate to the next level when you're ready to go to the next level. And that might take 3 weeks. It could take 3 years, but you're not going to get there until you have what it takes to actually get there. So, you get there when you get there, and don't have an unrealistic expectation of how long that's going to take, because that can be very, very frustrated. Lost Boy saying, I started 2.5 years ago, weighing around 270, 190 now. Congratulations. I was naive enough to think I'd be jacked and ripped at the one what mark, I think. Boy, was I wrong. Just now fully starting to look like I lift a tad. Yeah. And that's also what happens, where we look at people who have been doing this for years, literally years and years, or have just the right combination of genetics and they've got the right lifestyle and everything. There are so many things that go into, especially when it comes to the aesthetic qualities of the body. I've addressed this many times, that exercise is not a very reliable way to change the body aesthetically, because it's always about changing it functionally. And being able to try to change it aesthetically is a very, very chaotic, haphazard way to go about it. And of course, we only hear about the success stories. You take 1,000 people, give them a workout program, 2 people end up looking like Captain America, and they're the ones on the testimonials and the Instagrams, and they're the ones with the successful diet books and the blogs, and they're like, look at me, I did this program, blah, blah, blah. But you never hear about the 998 other people who look meh from doing the same exact thing. But we look at that one person because their image is everywhere, and we think that's what training does. That's what doing 100 push-ups a day will do. And it's like, no, there's far more people who don't look like that, who do those sorts of things. Now, again, not to say it's not what happens. We are always told by the messages in our fitness culture, which is largely based on marketing, not science, of what training is supposed to do to our body. And it's not true. But those are the messages we're inundated with. And it's not trying to be deceptive. I'm not saying there's guys in suits in boardrooms of how are we going to fool America in order to make more money. It's not like that. Messages, especially now with social media and stuff, the messages that propagate and get spread are usually just the ones we end up believing. And we end up believing the ones we want to believe. And the more we get exposed to various ideas and stuff, the more that we tend to believe them. It's just, we're brainwashing ourselves, in other words. But ideas like mine, where it's like, yeah, exercise is not a very reliable way to change how your body looks. Nobody wants that. So nobody's going to share it. Nobody's going to, probably by just saying that right there, I lost most people listening to this podcast, because nobody wants to hear that. No, we all want to know. It's like, what's the secret exercise for shredded 6-pack abs? Like, no exercise does that. That's not what exercise is supposed to do. You get down on the floor and do a plank for 5 minutes. That's a great way to train how to do a plank for 5 minutes, not how to look a different way. But of course, it can happen where you're going to look differently, but it's based on many other factors, of course, that all need to come into play as well. So we don't want to limit ourselves to just, am I doing the 6-pack abs routine? You want to also be thinking, what else contributes to 6-pack abs in addition to this ab routine? And that's going to give you a much better chance at it. Dan Jones asking, hey, Matt, just got the World Fit ISO Trainer. Fantastic. Feels like I just did a high-intensity sprint after every set. Oh, you know you're using it right, my friend. Very good. By the way, folks, I just did a bonus episode of the RDP podcast. It's also on the YouTube channel, where I talked with Rich Sonosa. He's a 63-year-old bodybuilder in the master's class, men's physique style bodybuilding, who does a lot of isometrics to get ready for his competitions. Wonderful, wonderful interview. He uses the ISO trainer as well. Highly recommend that. So check that out on the RDP channel. But well done, Dan. Well done on getting that ISO trainer. And the link to that, if you want to check it out, folks, is down below in the description as well. Oh, here's one. Sam saying, have a 9-month-old. Super difficult to find time to work out. What's a super simple, time-efficient routine to gain functional strength? So here's another one of these things. Let's bring it back to the positive now. All right, there's a lot of messages out there that this whole diet and exercise thing is supposed to be really, really, really hard. It's supposed to be ridiculously blood, sweat, and tears. You're supposed to spend it. I mean, we just propagated that now. We're talking about isometrics, and the ISO trainer is like, I feel like I did a sprint after every set, right? Blood, sweat, and tears. You're supposed to be beating yourself up. Oh my God, it's so hard and intense. Yeah, sometimes it is that. However, like that ISO trainer, he probably got that in like 10 minutes. So the idea of it's got to be a certain level of work in order to work is one of these ideas that's out there of an expectation, but the reality is far from it. Because most of the time, when people are achieving a good level of a result, they're using methods that are incredibly efficient. In fact, a lot of times when you talk to somebody, it's like, how did you make your back that big? How did you lose this weight? A lot of times the answer is something that makes you say, that's it? That's all you did? I knew, like, I'm always bringing up my buddy Mark, who I never got photos of. The man had 3 exercises in his entire repertoire: push-ups, pull-ups, and dips. That was all he did. And from the waist up, he had a body that would rival Arnold Schwarzenegger. And that's not an exaggeration. I'm dead serious about that. He would walk through the gym and people would be like, oh my God, who is that? Like, whoa, holy, he's got to be a professional body. He's got to be somebody. Who is this guy? I'm like, it's my buddy Mark. Believe it or not, he's homeless. And I just thought of Mark the other day because I work at a gym here in Denver, and there's an outdoor area to the gym. It's a wonderful place, Form Fitness, if you ever want to check it out. And they've got pull-up bars and stuff out there. And I was working out early Saturday morning, and there was a dude working out on the bars. I don't think he was a member there. I think he just was like, oh, here I go. Pull-up bar. I got a pull-up bar I can use. Great. The guy had an amazing physique. Unbelievable. I mean, I tried not to stare, but I'm like, oh, look at this guy. Ripped, shredded, jacked, unbelievable. And all he did was pull-ups and leg raises for that workout. That was it. And it was like 10 minutes and he was gone. So it does not take nearly as much as we think it does. And that's why I wrote my book, Micro Workouts, because when you get dialed in on what's most important to actually make a workout effective, it doesn't take very much. It really doesn't. I talked about this in my last episode last week on the 3 fundamental keys to an effective workout. And once you know those 3 things, your workout's going to be effective whether or not it takes you 5 hours or 5 minutes. So I know that was a bit of a sales pitch. I know I'm getting around here a little bit with a lot of stuff here. Say I'm sorry about that. But here's the bottom line is when you have other things going on in life, you want to use methods that you can integrate into your life. Most of the time when it comes to a conventional way of exercise that we're often expecting to do is we're supposed to be like, okay, life, time out. I got to go do my workout. And you get your gym clothes and your gym bag and you go over to the gym and you get changed in your gym clothes. And then you spend an hour to an hour and a half working out, and then you shower and then you put your stuff on. And then you go back to the office and you sit down in your chair and you're like, okay, life, time in. No, most people do not have that luxury, and especially you don't as well. But instead, if you can integrate it with things like calisthenics, having a couple of free weights at home, like a kettlebell or a simple set of dumbbells or something. And it's literally like, okay, the kids are down for a nap. I've got 15 minutes. Okay, here we go. I'm going to do some push-ups, some pull-ups, and some dumbbell lunges. Go. And you get it done in 10 minutes and you're good. Because that's literally all it really does take. And you got your basic fundamental push, pull, and squat. If you cover that, you're going to cover most everything you need, especially from the functional aspect of it. And it's something that you can easily integrate into your daily habits. So I got tons of resources. Check out my micro workouts playlist on the RDP channel. I got workouts that'll take you less than 5 minutes in that. Push, pull, and squat. You can't go wrong with it. If you type in PPS or push, pull, squat workout on my channel, you'll find examples there as well. And you can always modify things. Because remember, there's no like finish line of how long or hard a workout needs to be in order for it to be effective. I used to think like, okay, this workout only counts once I make it so long. I talked about this last week, the duration idea. But the fact is, if you just literally while listening to this, you're like, okay, I'm going to go and just bang out some pull-ups there on my pull-up bar. You get 2 sets of that. That still does a lot more than people realize. But it's not a workout. It's not something that forces you to, pause life and everything. So people think it can't possibly be very effective, but it is. Because it just needs to create that stimulus, regardless of how you go about it. Whoops, say a couple things here. Frotan, sorry, man, I tried to get to this one a little faster. And the coolest avatars here on the RDP YouTube channel. Love the idea of controlling your life instead of having a program control it for you. Absolutely, principles over dogma, shirt all day. Bingo. Become who you are. Yep. Where do you get these? All of my shirts that I always wear, I know I'm just wearing an Under Armour now, is at the RDP merch store down below in the description. The merch store is there. Also, for those who do not want to buy any of my products through Amazon, because I know people are like, screw Jeff Bezos, whatever kind of thing, or that you want the books in PDF form, that's also on the merch store as well, including the new book, Suspension Calisthenics, and that's available on the PDF as well. And what did I? Oh yeah, suspension straps. That's another one. I mean, if you can have at home something that is just ready to go, really quick and easy, like a kettlebell or a suspension strap that's hanging out or something, you can get in a workout in under 5 minutes. You can make it happen. We don't need to make our exercise this thing that we have to time out life for. I always did the same thing with just work in general. Like I have several jobs, I guess you could say, throughout my life. I don't have a 9-to-5 schedule. Some days I work 3 hours, some days I work 16 hours, right? I don't have a regular schedule. And that's by design, because one of the things I did not like about school growing up was I would get up in the morning, kind of choke down a breakfast and be like, okay. And then I'd go through the school day and be like, okay, at the end of the school day, then I get to live my life. Then I get to have my life back and do what I want and how I want it and everything like that. And I vowed that I don't want a 9-to-5 job that does the same thing. I want to be able to get up, do a couple hours of work. Okay, now I go and do something else that I want to do. And now I do this other thing and so forth. Same thing with exercise. I don't ever like work out for the most part. I just kind of get physical activity here and there throughout the day as I see fit. And believe me, it's wonderful. It's great. Tim Tunes, good to see you again, my friend. Hey, Matt, because of you, I bought Muscle Control by Maxic and I'm loving it. Do you practice his exercises? Very good. I don't really practice so much of the exercises in the book, although it's been so long since I've read it. I really should revisit it, that I'm even blanking on what are those like sort of thing. But it was the genius, or the genesis behind many of my methods, of course. The overcoming isometrics, using isometrics, the grind style calisthenics program, all of these sorts of things, because Maxic was the first little seed planted in the back of my mind of that tension control really is the foundation to a successful bout of exercise and strength training. And when you improve that, you greatly improve the effectiveness of any strength exercise you do. I've gone on the record and I still stand by it. If your tension control in a muscle is poor, nothing you do will be very effective, no matter how long you work and how hard you work. But if you can improve that tension control, anything you do will be greatly enhanced regardless of how you go about doing it. And that's certainly, I still stand by that for sure. And Maxic was the first one to do that. Check it out, folks. Muscle Control by Maxic. It's a thing that you can find on Amazon pretty easily. I think you maybe even find it in the public domain for free somewhere. I should look into seeing if that's something I can make available for folks. But Frotan asking, Matt, you said adding resistance with weightlifting and calisthenics is basically the same. So what would you say is the significant difference, and why do you prefer bodyweight exercises for most things? So yeah, so again, I approach things on the fundamental level. I don't look at things like, oh, you should do this kind of exercise or that kind of training or body weight versus free weights and stuff. This is always kind of like debating Chevy versus Ford. But at the end of the day, you're like, dude, I just want directions to the freaking airport. I don't give a damn what I'm driving here. So unless you have something that you like to do, like I just like bodyweight training. It just suits me. I like the efficiency of it. I like the freedom of it. I like how it makes my body feel. That's literally the only reasons why I do it, okay? Because fundamentally, if we want to make a bigger muscle bigger and stronger, we need to increase time under tension, time and tension, and not just doing a million push-ups and stuff. We want how much tension is in the muscle and how long we can hold it there for, and a combination thereof. And it really doesn't matter how you go about doing that, because fundamentally, if I'm bending my elbows against resistance, I'm working my biceps. It doesn't matter if I'm on a pull-up bar, suspension trainer, barbell, dumbbells, lifting children like I did in Japan when I was studying abroad. I lifted the 3 and a 5-year-old of my host family. They loved it. They thought it was fun. And it was fun. It doesn't matter. It's like, as long as I'm progressively working my biceps to flex my elbow, it's doing the same thing fundamentally. However, of course, there's a difference in what I call the flavor of the exercise. Some people, they're like barbells all day long. Some people, suspension straps, and they're like, oh, this feels great. I love how this makes me feel. It's exactly like if you go into an ice cream shop and you're like, I love Rocky Road. How about vanilla? Screw vanilla. Vanilla's for wusses. I don't like vanilla. And you're literally basing the decision on chocolate versus vanilla off of just purely personal preference. And that's how we really should be basing a lot of our decisions on what kind of diet and exercise we're following. Because as long as it fundamentally does what we need it to do, like progressive time under tension, caloric deficit if we're trying to lose weight, giving ourselves adequate nutrition for health and well-being, all these sorts of things, as long as we're getting the fundamental level covered, you can do almost fuck all and still get the job done. And most of the time, we should be basing our decisions and building our programs and making our diets and all this stuff purely off of what do you just want to do? What do you like to do? Because that's another expectation, is that getting in shape is all about making yourself do things you don't want to do, making sacrifices you don't want to do. And again, you hear this a lot from people who are at the more extreme end of things. You know, someone's getting ready for a movie role and they're like, I would kill for a hot fudge sundae right now, but I just can't. I've got this photo shoot in 3 days. I've got to be at my best. Yes, absolutely. But that's a very, very, very short period of time they have to do that. Outside of that, if it was a Saturday night and they'd be like, you want to go out, get some ice cream? It's like, yeah, I want to go get some ice cream. What are you kidding? Let's go. So it's a very short little expectation that we have that gets broadened out of it's supposed to be blood, sweat, and tears and misery and torture and sacrifice and stuff. And it's like that's usually not how it works. You do the exercises largely just because that's what I like to do. I like Rocky Road instead of vanilla, so I get Rocky Road. I do calisthenics instead of barbell training just because that's what I like. The flavor suits me. And if you're on the opposite, you're like, I hate calisthenics, I'd rather use dumbbells. I'm like, great, go for that as well. We don't need to get lost in the nitty gritty of like, you're supposed to do it this way and you have to do it that way and stuff. No, you don't. No, I'm progressively working my muscles harder. Good, check mark. It's going to work. It's getting the job done. That's all you need to worry about is the fundamental level. Are you getting it done? And if that's the case, then do whatever the hell you want. And also don't do anything you want. If there's something you just don't like doing, you're like, I could still get the job done, but without this thing, it's like, well, then get rid of it. Desire and required. These are the only two good reasons to adopt any diet and exercise habit and program. If it's not required, which it usually isn't, and you don't desire it, there's literally no good reason at all to be doing it. You're forcing yourself to conform to something that's out of alignment for no good reason. Tactic 4-1, strength comes from resistance training. Yes, there is nothing special about moving your body through space compared to moving objects through space. Absolutely, very good. And it doesn't even come from moving. Remember, I always use the words tension. Tension. So we have weight, we have resistance, and we have muscle tension. They all seem very, very similar, but they're actually three completely different things. So you can have a weight that you're moving, like a 20-pound dumbbell. Okay. So if I'm lifting a weight, that creates some degree of resistance as I move it against gravity, of course. But then we have resistance, and resistance is also contingent upon technique to a large degree. So if I have 20 pounds on the end of my arm and it's stretched out like this is generating a certain amount of resistance on my shoulder. If I bend my elbow, different technique, same weight, different level of resistance. Okay, and I can use all sorts of other ways to kind of cheat it and stuff. So we don't want to think that weight equals tension because it's a 3-step process away from it. We have weight, we have resistance, and then we have muscle tension. And we always want to make sure we remember that when it comes to building a muscle to be bigger and stronger, it's tension that's important. I don't give a damn what your weight is. You know, you could have the most weight in the world, and if you're not generating much tension, it's not going to do very much for you. But if you have seemingly not a whole lot of weight, but you're generating a crap ton of tension, it's going to work a hell of a lot better. That's why overcoming isometrics works so well. There's no weight there. There's hardly any weight there, and it doesn't seem like it can work. You're not even moving, so how could there be much in terms of resistance? But there's a crap ton of tension. And at the end of the day, tension is what matters the most, of course. All right. Mariano asking again, hey, Matt, social media and training to upload videos is a negative player in the expectations versus reality game. To a large degree, yeah. I mean, there are certainly folks out there who have more of a realistic viewpoint to things, but it just doesn't get a lot of attention. And I know a lot of people love to blame Facebook and, you know, the algorithms and stuff like that. But remember that the internet is by and large a confirmation biased machine. It's feeding us whatever we tell it to feed us. And so when we like someone who's got abs, when we like someone who seemingly has a great level of results, When we save a post of, 3 weird diet tricks to boost your metabolism and stuff, we're just perpetuating the cycle, telling the internet, show me more of these sorts of things. And the messages just simply grow. And this is something that's been in existence since the dawn of human history. Ever since there were, shouters in the town square at the local castle telling people about the local tournaments or whatever and shouting advertisements and stuff, whatever messages just get traction are the ones that grow. And whatever ones don't get traction just kind of fizzle and die. And so they grow and they get amplified and we believe them more. And back in the day, a message would just be on a cycle of like a monthly thing with a magazine. But now with social media, it happens hundreds of times a second. So that message can get amplified and grow a heck of a lot faster. But it's no different than fundamentally what's been happening since the dawn of civilization. Gen Zem saying he's just sent me the Maxic PDF, should be in mailbox now. Thank you very much, Gen Zem. I'm going to look into maybe making that available. I don't know if there's a copyright thing there, but if possible, I will put it on the Red Delta Project free PDFs page. I've got a page on RDP, reddeltaproject.com, with all of my free PDFs that you can check out, and they're all free. You can download them. I don't want your email address or anything. You just click on them, things like my calorie hacking approach and chain training and all that sort of thing. It's very good to check that out, reddeltaproject.com. 410, hey Matt, on tension control, being due to your core isometric exercise with a towel, can you breathe fine with tension, but it's very hard to tense the core to max tension or higher while still breathing. This is a very common thing that happens a lot with core training is when we brace our core, we also tense our diaphragm. And that's why we have trouble breathing. And it takes a certain level of coordination, and it's hard to learn, which is why I like the isometric version of it. Because when we're moving dynamically, it can be a little bit harder. One of the reasons why I love isometrics for tension creation and control is because it's a hell of a lot easier to learn than when we're trying to move. So when we're pushing down, this is an isometric exercise. It's like an ab crunch. You're pushing downwards from something that's attached up above. It gives you the ability to have some degree of tension in your abs and a little bit, in the obliques and stuff, but also have enough relaxation in your diaphragm so you can have at least some degree of breath control. And it's a pat your head, rub your belly kind of thing. It just takes practice. It takes control. But once you can gain some of that, it really does help a whole lot with the ability to keep the breathing going so you don't exhaust yourself while you're exercising. And that makes your ab training more comfortable, but also a heck of a lot more effective. All right. And let's see, what else can we do? I've written a lot of them down. I haven't even looked at my my plans here. So I've got a lot of things that I wrote down. Yeah, it was set for life. Got that. So I want to talk a little bit more about the idea of like this thing is supposed to be so hard and difficult, because this is one that I fell for a lot. Like basically my whole approach to diet and exercise was I would practice anything as long as it felt hard. As long as it felt like it was a challenge or difficult to do, then it's like, well, that's got to be effective because it takes a whole lot of effort. Well, it's got to be effective because it's making me sweat buckets and my hands are, all hurt and everything from doing push-ups on hot pavement and stuff. I would do things purposely to effectively beat my body up just because it hurt or was very uncomfortable, regardless of whether or not it was actually effective. And so this is why I get pushback sometimes when people who are like, I'd like to lose weight. I'd like to, well, we can talk a little bit of diet. And they'd say things like, oh, well, I would like to eat better, but I don't want to give up my favorite foods. I don't want to give up chocolate. I don't want to give up, chips and things like that. I'm like, I don't either. I don't give that stuff up. No. They'd be like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, nobody does that. Like a lot of the most fit people I know don't have the typical dietary approach where we think we should. And I always love giving this example. I used to work for one of the biggest gyms here in Denver. We had 30, 40 trainers on staff at any time. And this included Pilates instructors and class instructors and stuff. Right? There's a big gym, over 1,000 people a day came in and stuff. We'd get celebrities and stuff. It was very, very kind of a hoity-toity, lavender scented towels, the whole works kind of deal. And all these trainers, all these coaches and stuff on staff, almost nobody ever did any sort of dietary stuff you see on media these days. Like no one did keto or paleo or vegan or vegetarian fasting, all this stuff that we're told like, this is the way to eat. Nobody did that at all. The only people in that gym who were on those types of fatty, trendy sort of diets were the members. And by and large, it was the members who were struggling to get results. If we ever did it, it'd be like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we did like the keto diet for like 2 weeks? So like, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to play a round of like poker and the loser has to do it for 2 weeks. And it's like, you're on kind of thing. And so that's what it would do. Like most of us are like, no, we go down to the burger joint down below every Friday and we get ourselves a burger and fries as a treat to the end of the week. And we're coming in, we've got our salads and we get our sandwiches. And it's like, we don't do that stuff. And that's, I think, a lot of the expectations is people come into fitness thinking it's got to be the stuff you see on social media. It's got to be the stuff that gets a lot of traction. But again, extreme stuff is what gets traction. By and large, the people who are in the best shape aren't doing any of that sort of thing. They're not working out until they're puking. They're not doing the workouts that leave them sore for days. They're not doing diets that restrict them and make them ready to kill for a chocolate chip cookie. Again, in the short term, maybe someone who's getting ready for prep and things like that, for sure. But by and large, the people who lose the weight and keep it off and stuff, they're not doing that stuff. Because A, it's got to be relatively easy to sustain. You can try to do things as hard as possible, but this again goes with that optimization idea, is that, oh, I got to push myself to the limit all the time and I got to make it as hard as possible. And yeah, you can, but you can't sustain it. And the only way we're going to stand much of a chance of getting what we want is if we adopt habits and behaviors that we can sustain relatively easily for years on end. That's the real secret. But I know no one wants to hear that. It doesn't get traction on the messages out in the media because if I'm like, yeah, I have my 3P strategy, plant protein and portion at every meal. And that's like 90% of what my diet is based off of. I don't give anything up. I eat enough, but not too much. Drink water. I don't drink too much alcohol. I'm active every day, and people are like, yeah, boring. Come on. What are the secrets here? What is the strange Aztecian or what's the diet strategy that the warriors of Atlantis use that I can use for my office job, lunch with my coworkers or whatever? It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all sales pitches and things like that. The reality is the stuff that works best in fitness is the boring stuff, the stuff that doesn't get traction, the stuff that doesn't seem exciting or extreme and stuff. It's the stuff that is relatively easy to maintain every single time. What do you do for your back? Pull-ups and bodyweight rows. What are you going to do for tomorrow? Pull-ups and bodyweight rows. What else do you do? Pull-ups and bodyweight rows. Maybe throw in some curls. It's like, it's not that crazy. It's not the extreme stuff that people are going after. All right, let me get to some fast questions here as we're winding up. Sinitar Thrax, hey Matt, what's your opinion on eccentric quasi-isometrics? Is more of a beat up the body thing or does it have potential? Yeah, it's more of a beat up body kind of thing. Years ago, eccentrics got really, really big because it was found that the bulk of muscle damage may happen during the eccentric portion of a lift. And everyone's like, well, it's muscle damage that causes growth and stuff. But as I was sharing with the podcast last week, that the whole muscle damage equals muscle growth thing is kind of really falling out of favor these days. So these days, it's usually more of, yeah, sure, if you want your workout to basically be more uncomfortable and beat up your body more than necessary, then go for it. But I wouldn't put too much faith into it. A lot of times, though, the eccentrics, people like the eccentrics because they can get more tension in the muscle. It's not technically true because your muscles tense harder for concentric, but you would find very complicated, convoluted ways where guys would have a ton of weight and they'd like force it down. And so like, oh, I'm so much stronger. No, it's not the eccentric. It's the fact that you just have a lot of tension in the muscle and you're still going to get more tension in the muscle through the isometric. So I would just stick with the isometrics. I wouldn't put too much faith into the concentrics right there. Michael from Drop Weight Daddy. Traps on my stubborn area, currently doing Y flies, lateral flies, face pulls, very good. However, traps being stubborn. Any additional ideas to fire up those lazy fibers? So make sure that you're using all of your traps. Okay, a lot of times we think of this as their traps right up top here, but this is a very, very, very small portion of your trapezius muscle. Go on Google, look at trapezius muscle. It's this big, massive fanning type thing. You got your lower traps, your mid traps, your upper traps, and stuff. And all of those should be engaged to at least some degree with every single upper body exercise you ever do. If you're putting any resistance through your hands, your traps should be working to some degree. And this is one of the things that I've really been excited about and learned over the past several months and so forth, is to really make a sleeping muscle work well and engage and to build it up to be stronger. It's not about doing it better in one exercise. It's to use that muscle much more all the time. And that's going to create a lot more volume and potential activation. So warm up with an isometric rear fly, okay, with the hands a little higher if you want to get a little bit more in those traps, and make sure every row and push you're doing is getting a lot of scapular protraction and retraction. That's going to get those traps working a hell of a lot more than if you kept your shoulders locked and you were just using your arms as well. Isometric deadlifts are also really good for that as well, if you want to dip your toe into that water. Tim Toons, hey Matt, yesterday, leaning against don't stick to learned again, don't stick to dogmas. Absolutely. Normally I do 6 to 10 moves, 1 to 2 sets. Good. Didn't feel it. Was almost skipping it, but wanted to move and did 1 rep, 6 moves, then 2 more rounds equals awesome. Fantastic. Again, flexible. We want to feel like, oh, this approach is going to take care of me. This approach is going to give me everything I need. No, you get what you need by understanding fundamentally what you're trying to accomplish, and then do whatever the hell you want to make that happen. The other day, I was asked about isometrics. How many sets? However many you want to do, dude. 1 set, 5 sets, 20 sets, I don't care. How many is it going to take? Don't limit yourself to a number. Get the job done. If I'm hammering in a nail, I'm not concerned with how many times I hit that nail. Not on the internet. Should I hit it 4 times or 5 times? Some guy's like, oh, you should hit it 8 times. No, 8 times too much. You're going to break the nail if you do that. I only hit it twice. If you do it right, you should only hit. Who cares? Hit the damn thing. Muscles are like nails. You just hit it. And if you want more, go more. If you want less, go less. Intensity is something we can modify a little bit between the two. But no matter what number I give you, it's probably going to be wrong. It's like driving your car. What's the correct speed to drive at? No matter what number I give you, it's going to be wrong most of the time. 35 miles an hour. Drive your car at 35 miles an hour. Always. Never deviate from that. That's what dogmas do. They give you the false impression that you're in control, that you're going to be taken care of, that you are powerful, that you're self-sufficient. It's actually taking those things away from you because you're not making decisions. You're not in control. You're not being able to choose should you do more or less on a case-by-case basis. You're just following a number. You're not disciplined. You're obedient. And that's not always a terrible thing. But when you understand, it's like I'm trying to hit my muscles to the point where they're really contracting hard for strength, and I'm contracting them hard, but now they're starting to lose that ability to contract for stamina and hypertrophy. It's like, great. Whether it takes 3 sets, 5 sets, 2 sets, you could get it done in 1 set, doesn't matter. Get that done and just do whatever amount of work it takes to get it done, and you are good. But when we find ourselves saying, I've got to do X amount of work, then it's like saying, I've got to drive 35 miles an hour. Doesn't matter if I'm in a school zone. Doesn't matter if it's rush hour traffic. Doesn't matter if I'm on an interstate and the Autobahn in Germany or something, and cars are whizzing by me at 100 miles an hour. 35 is the true correct number to drive at. Like, it's going to be wrong most of the time. And I'd rather get in the ballpark most of the time rather than, quote, being right all the time. Okay, let me get to a couple last questions here. See if I missed anything. I know and as always, you can ask me questions on the Red Delta Project Instagram as well. DM me there, and I always can get those as well. Let's see. All right. So basically what I'm saying is that, as I've always said, fitness is recognizing that, things about our expectations are largely artificial. Exercise is an artificial concept. Dieting is an artificial concept. It's not real as far as Mother Nature is concerned. But when it comes to getting the results we want, we have to recognize that it's not about diet. It's not about exercise. I don't care what you're doing in your training or whether or not you eat chocolate bars or not. That's not what's truly important. What's actually on the ground level of reality here is the fundamental processes of mother and human nature. Everything we're building on top of that, of you got to eat this way and you got to train that way and do this exercise instead of that, this is just fluff. It's filler, it's window dressing, it's stuff that we're making up for better or for worse. It's not actually, it's the matrix, basically. It's the world in front of your eyes that's just been fooling you into thinking this is how reality works, when in reality, it's not. It's the fundamental processes, the laws of Mother Nature that are real. That's why I always tell people there's no such thing as an ineffective exercise. Exercise is 100% effective for everybody 100% of the time. It never doesn't work. But we have the expectations of, isn't this supposed to make me jacked? Isn't this supposed to make me leaner? Isn't this supposed to make me able to do this type of thing this way in a certain amount of time? That's all up here. That's our imagination. It's our creative mind that's fooling ourselves with all the messages in our fitness culture that are telling you this is the way it should be. But I personally would rather be the way that it really is in reality, because it's a hell of a lot more fun. And it's a hell of a lot more empowering as well. And I know I just barely scratched the surface here. It's not something, it goes a lot deeper than this, of course, but at least it can go a little bit more into the depths of whenever we run into our expectations are not being met, chances are that's because we don't understand how it really actually works when it comes to diet and exercise. It's not that we've done something wrong or that things are, what's wrong with me? I guess my metabolism's broken or something. It's like, no, it always works and always works perfectly well because it's not based on fairness. It's based on balance. The universe is always in balance. And all the adjustments we're trying to make are about maintaining said balance. And if we're not in alignment with that, then we're fine. We just misunderstand how it actually works, and refer to my previous 2 episodes here on the RDP podcast, or 3, I think it is, on how that works. So thank you very much for coming on in, folks, with your questions. As always, the audio for this will be up on the podcast directories in the next couple of days, but I will talk to you folks next week. Till then, be fit and live free.